Hello, my name is Veronica Salgado, and I'll be presenting The Bear, which is one story from a book called Go Down Moses by William Faulkner. Go Down Moses is a book made of fictional short stories that all differ from each other but eventually connects and links the characters together, as well as themes and central ideas. Before we get into the story, I'd like to talk about the writing style and central focus of the story. Faulkner uses a free-flowing and experimental style of writing that reads like a stream of consciousness, you can see in the quote. If Sam Fathers had been his mentor and the backyard rabbits and squirrels his kindergarten, then the wilderness the old bear ran was his college, and the old male bear itself, so long unwifed and childless as to have become its own ungendered progenitor, was his alma mater. Um, Faulkner 201 to 202. This quote should give you some idea of what the story is about. He's being educated by nature, and his true testament is coming face to face with the bear. We're also going to focus on the theme of ownership. There's a few themes in this book, but ownership and property is the biggest one that stands out to me. There's this idea that we have progressed as so much in a society, um, so much as a society, as a species, but what has that left for the rest of the world? Deforestation, the erasing of cultures, plants, and animals. Who are we to say we own these woods? This story is understood as a coming-of-age tale from a perspective of a boy named Isaac, also known as Ike, and his learning about the forest and how humans affect nature. Isaac also comes to reflect on what it means to own property and how it can be represented in the present society of the 1800s. From land to dogs to people, throughout the story of the bear, Isaac reflects on his surroundings by detailing the likes of the forest before mankind. How it was once lush, green, and beautiful, but now is haunted by tree stumps, axe markings, and the lack of diversity among animals, or lack of animals, period. Ike comes to understand that the nature that was once there is forever changed and will never be restored to its original form since mankind has entered. Isaac is a young hunter raised in a clan of huntsmen in the deep forests of the 1800s. Isaac is alive during the time of slavery, which is reflected upon throughout the book, and often compares the property of land and its unsustainability to the owning of people. Isaac and the hunters seek out the bear annually to rendezvous with it. It's important to know that the clansmen hunters do not aim to kill the bear. The hunters, or at least most, understand the importance of the bear to the ecology of the area. The ecosystem relies on the bear to maintain a balance in both plants and animals. What the hunters are doing is seeking out the bear to experience the wildness of nature, for which it's the last of its kind. After humans have destroyed the bear's ecosystem and ravaged his woods, it's their last experience in being in the presence of something more powerful than themselves. After destroying so many things in just a few short centuries, Isaac also Isaac also dreams about the bear, as it looms over him and then disappears. Isaac wants to see the bear and regards him as a sacred being. When he goes out looking for the bear, he leaves behind his gun, which shows he leaves behind his power, to essentially bow down to something greater than himself. So Sam Fathers is a mixed race person, Native American and Black. He is a mentor and a guide to Isaac, and more importantly, a father figure, which is really important to Isaac's development as a character. Isaac respects Sam Fathers during a time where many don't even consider him a person or to have remotely the same intelligence as someone from white descent. Sam Fathers is very much a slave and will never be given the same respect in his lifetime. He will never be regarded as a full human, always as less than. It's interesting to see where Isaac's respect and seeing Sam as a father will take him and how his view of Sam could impact and change the world. And again, there's this theme of inheritance and ownership. How can we own what isn't ours? How can we own people? How can we own land? So Old Ben is a nickname for the bear that lives in the camp area of Isaac. He has an injured left foot from a bear trap that we know of. He's almost regarded as like a mythical creature in the way that the clansmen and Isaac talk about him. He's rarely seen. He's also the last bear in this area of the woods, which ties into lineage and heritage. Either trying to protect ourselves or hunting endangered animals for fun, we end up killing and erasing lineage that also maintains the forest. So bears are extremely important to the ecology of the area in what they eat, in maintaining the soil, in creating a balance. And so in doing that, we're not just killing this animal for fun or because it's endangering us, but we're also putting nature and the ecosystem at risk. Um, so I chose this quote in Faulkner 183. It looked and towered in his dreams before he even saw the unaxed woods where it left its crooked print, shaggy, huge, red-eye, not malevolent, but just big. So essentially what this quote is saying, um, Ben is not bad just because he's big, just because he's a bear, and we don't have to kill him. And then below I put one's a painting and one is a picture of men from probably over a century ago who are hanging up bears and buffalo and holding them up, and you can tell they're clearly very proud. And I think I'm not trying to compare these huntsmen to the huntsmen in the book, except for the fact that there are some huntsmen who aren't respectful of the forest, and in general this just represents humans and the need to conquer and the need to control, and um, without really thinking, except for the fact that it feels good to hunt, it feels good to eat meat a lot, maybe, and it really just shows like the human need to overpower. And if you're not careful, you can wipe out a population and wipe out a history. And yeah, and this could end up harming an ecosystem and eventually harming ourselves because we need nature to survive as much as we think we don't. And then this shows, so Isaac goes out to seek the bear at one point. He leaves behind his compass, watch, and gun. Um, he realizes that the bear will come and find him when he realizes that he doesn't have any weapons. So the compass symbolizes technology, machinery. The watch symbolizes heritage. And the gun symbolizes his manhood. And in leaving these things behind, he's kind of bowing down to something that could end up harming him, but we don't know if it will. And I really like this part in the story where he leaves behind his gun because he's all about becoming a man, and I feel like the manliest thing that you can do is set aside your own pride and need to overpower and dominate for the greater good. And then the problem with property, so you'll see over here that there's a woman crouching with a baby who is nursing at a slave market or slave trade area. And I think one thing about this that I thought was really interesting was was it kind of made me think about the slaves. It was very common in slave culture or like in slave trade times, that mothers who were Black slave mothers would nurse white babies. And so these Black mothers, slaves, were giving life to these children, these white children, and then who eventually they would end up owning. And it's like owning your adoptive mother who like you wouldn't be able to survive most likely without. And I think it kind of represents also the relationship between Sam and Isaac, because Isaac doesn't have to respect Sam, but he chooses to. And I don't know if Sam's expecting something in return, but Sam is willing to guide him as much as he can because maybe because he wants to, maybe because he has to, I'm not really sure, but this definitely does make me think. And then lastly, what is Faulkner trying to show us? So I think what Faulkner is trying to show us is when we get wrapped up in the need to control, to dominate, to have whatever you want, resources, etc., we end up deteriorating cultures, species, a whole like history that was before us. And think about just like how different it was like just 100 years ago. And especially during this time, I mean, he's talking about this in the 1800s, how damaged the ecosystem is. I mean, uh, I just think about how much more lush it was once, 300 or so years ago. But all right, and here's my citation, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.